For almost 3 centuries, Europe lived in fear of witches. A single accusation could destroy a family. A whispered rumor could become a death sentence. And thousands of ordinary men and women were executed for crimes that could never truly be proven. But how did an entire society become convinced that its own neighbors were servants of evil? And why did some of history's darkest trials continue for so long? Tonight, we travel back to uncover the remarkable true story behind the witch hunts. Before we begin, if you enjoy peaceful history documentaries like this one, please consider taking a quiet moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me continue creating relaxing journeys through history designed to help you unwind, learn something new, and gently drift off to sleep. Now, make yourself comfortable, dim the lights if you wish, take a slow, gentle breath, and allow the sounds of history to carry you back more than 500 years to a world where fear often spoke louder than reason, where suspicion could become evidence, and where one of history's greatest tragedies quietly unfolded. This is the story of the witch hunts. Imagine a quiet morning somewhere in medieval Europe. The sun has not fully risen yet, and a small village is slowly waking to begin another ordinary day. A church bell echoes softly across the fields. Smoke rises from a few chimneys as families prepare simple breakfasts before heading to work. For the people who live here, life follows the same rhythm it has followed for generations. The rising sun marks the beginning of the day, and darkness signals its end. There are no clocks, no newspapers, and no knowledge of the distant world beyond the nearby towns and forests. Most people will spend their entire lives only a few miles from the place where they were born. Their village is their whole world. Every family depends on the land. Wheat, vegetables, a few animals, and the changing seasons provide almost everything they need to survive. A good harvest means security. A poor harvest means hunger. A healthy cow can feed a family for months, while the loss of a single animal may become a serious hardship. Life is simple, but it is never easy. Every season brings new challenges. Spring offers hope as fields begin to grow again. Summer is filled with long hours of hard work beneath the sun. Autumn becomes a race against time as every family gathers food before winter arrives. Then winter covers the countryside with cold, darkness, and uncertainty. No one knows whether the stored grain will last until spring, or whether illness will visit the village before the snow begins to melt. Uncertainty is simply part of everyday life. Yet the people who live here are far from unwise. They understand the land remarkably well. They know when to plant their crops, where to find clean water, and which herbs may ease pain or reduce a fever. Their knowledge has been passed from parents to children for countless generations. It is practical, valuable, and built through experience. But even with all they know, many questions remain unanswered. Why does one child recover from a fever while another does not? Why does lightning strike one tree but leave the next untouched? Why does disease sometimes spread through an entire village without warning? These questions have no clear answers. There are no hospitals to study illness, no scientists to explain nature, and no instruments capable of revealing the hidden causes of disease. When something unexpected happens, people naturally search for an explanation. Faith plays an important role in helping them understand the world. The church is more than a place of worship. It is the center of the community, a place where people gather not only to pray, but also to share news, seek advice, and find comfort during difficult times. Religious teachings help explain many of life's mysteries, offering hope in a world where certainty is rare. But not every mystery seems easy to explain. A healthy animal dies overnight. A storm destroys only one farmer's field. A child suddenly becomes ill while everyone else remains healthy. Events like these leave people asking difficult questions. When no clear answer can be found, imagination often begins to fill the empty spaces left by uncertainty. This is not because people are foolish. It is because the human mind naturally searches for meaning. Throughout history, every civilization has tried to explain what it could not yet understand. In medieval Europe, those explanations often combined faith, tradition, and stories that had been shared for generations. Little by little, the ordinary and the mysterious began to exist side by side. Most days passed peacefully, filled with work, family, and familiar routines. Yet beneath that ordinary life remained a quiet awareness that unseen forces might also shape the world around them. It was within this atmosphere of uncertainty that one of history's greatest waves of fear would slowly begin to grow. As the days pass, life in the village continues, much as it always has. The fields are tended, animals are cared for, and families gather each evening around the warmth of the fire. These quiet moments are more than a chance to rest after a long day. They are also a time for stories. Parents share the tales they once heard from their own parents, and children listen with careful attention. Some stories speak of brave kings and distant battles. Others tell of strange lights seen deep within the forest, travelers who disappeared without a trace, or mysterious figures said to wander lonely roads after sunset. No one knows where these stories first began. Many have been passed from one generation to the next for hundreds of years, changing a little with every retelling. Some are meant to entertain, while others serve as gentle warnings. Children are taught not to wander too far into the woods. Travelers are advised not to remain on the road after dark. Whether every story is true matters less than the lesson it teaches. In time, these stories become part of everyday life. They shape the way people think about the world around them. In villages like this, nature often feels both generous and unpredictable. A river that provides fresh water during the summer may overflow after days of heavy rain. A forest that offers firewood and shelter can also hide wolves and dangerous paths. The same land that feeds a family one year may fail them the next. Living so close to nature teaches respect, but it also leaves room for uncertainty. When people cannot fully explain why something has happened, they often turn to the explanations they know best. Sometimes those explanations come from faith, sometimes they come from tradition, and sometimes they come from stories that have been repeated for so long they begin to feel like truth. There are also people within every village who seem to possess knowledge that others do not. Some understand the healing properties of plants. Others know how to help during childbirth or how to care for the sick, using remedies handed down through generations. These men and women are often respected because their knowledge has been earned through years of experience. Yet their skills can also appear mysterious to those who do not understand them. A remedy that saves one life but fails to save another raises difficult questions. Why did it work one time but not the next? No one can say with certainty. It is easy to forget that medieval people were careful observers of the natural world. They noticed patterns, remembered the changing seasons, and learned from experience. But observation alone could not answer every mystery. Without the tools of modern science, many questions remained beyond human understanding. The unknown was not empty. It was filled with possibilities. Gradually, the line between the natural and the supernatural became less clear. An unusual dream, an unexpected illness, or a series of unfortunate events could all seem connected in ways that are difficult for us to imagine today. Looking back from the modern world, it may be tempting to dismiss these beliefs as simple superstition. Yet that would overlook something deeply human. Every society throughout history has tried to explain what it could not yet understand. The answers may have changed over the centuries, but the search for meaning has always remained the same. As medieval Europe moved forward, these old traditions would slowly meet an even stronger influence. The teachings of the Church would shape how people understood good and evil, heaven and hell, and the unseen forces they believed surrounded them. It was within that meeting of faith, tradition, and uncertainty that the foundations of the witch hunts would quietly begin to take shape. For the people of medieval Europe, faith was not simply one part of life. It was the foundation upon which everything else was built. Every season, every celebration, every hardship, and every hope was understood through the teachings of the Church. The church bell did more than announce the passing of time. It called people together, marked important moments in life, and reminded the village that they belonged to something greater than themselves. Most people could not read, and books were both rare and expensive. Instead, knowledge was shared through sermons, conversations, and memory. On Sundays and holy days, families gathered inside the stone walls of their local church to hear stories from the Bible and lessons about how to live a good and faithful life. These stories explained not only the love of God, but also the existence of evil. To modern ears, the devil is often viewed as a symbolic figure. But for many people living during the Middle Ages, Satan was believed to be real. He was not thought of as a character in a story, but as an active force constantly trying to lead people away from God. Temptation, suffering, and misfortune could all be seen as signs of an ongoing spiritual struggle. This belief shaped the way people understood the world around them. When something good happened, it was often seen as a blessing. When something terrible happened, many believed that evil was at work. This way of thinking offered answers in a world filled with uncertainty. It gave meaning to events that otherwise seemed impossible to explain. At the same time, medieval Christianity also emphasized the importance of personal responsibility. Every individual was expected to resist temptation and remain faithful, despite the many challenges of daily life. Stories of saints overcoming evil inspired courage, while stories of those who gave in to temptation served as warnings. These lessons became deeply rooted in everyday culture. They were repeated so often that they shaped not only religious belief, but also the way communities judged right and wrong. It is important to remember that this was not simply a time of fear. Faith also brought comfort. It gave people hope during illness, strength during famine, and peace when facing death. In a world where life was often short and unpredictable, the promise of eternal life offered reassurance that suffering was not the end of the story. Yet wherever there is a strong belief in goodness, there is often an equally strong belief in the existence of evil. Over time, many people came to believe that Satan did not work alone. If evil wished to influence the world, it would surely seek human helpers. That simple idea, once combined with old traditions, local folklore, and growing anxiety, would slowly give rise to one of history's most dangerous beliefs. Before long, people would begin asking a question that had rarely been spoken aloud before. If the devil truly walked among them, who was helping him? The belief that evil existed was not new. Nearly every society throughout history had its own stories about dark forces, spirits, or unseen dangers. What made medieval Europe different was the growing belief that the devil could actively work through ordinary people. At first, this was not an idea that caused widespread panic. It appeared mainly in religious discussions and theological writings, where scholars debated the nature of temptation and the power of evil. For most villagers, daily life remained focused on farming, family, and survival. Yet ideas have a way of changing over time. As generations passed, older folk traditions slowly blended with religious teachings. Stories that had once been told around the fire began to take on new meanings. A mysterious figure in the forest was no longer simply part of local legend. Some people began to wonder whether darker forces could be hiding behind such stories. During times of peace, these questions rarely troubled entire communities. But difficult years have a way of changing how people think. When harvests failed, disease spread, or war reached the countryside, uncertainty grew stronger. Fear encouraged people to search for simple explanations to very complicated problems. If evil truly existed, perhaps someone had invited it into the village. Perhaps someone had chosen to serve it. This belief did not appear overnight, nor was it accepted everywhere in the same way. Different regions held different traditions, and many people remained skeptical of extraordinary claims. Even within the church, opinions were not always identical. Some religious leaders warned against accepting every strange accusation without evidence, while others believed that the danger was greater than many realized. These debates continued for centuries, gradually shaping the way educated people thought about witchcraft and the devil. At the same time, stories became more detailed. People spoke of secret meetings held under the cover of darkness, of promises supposedly made to evil forces, and of hidden knowledge passed from one person to another. Most of these stories were based on rumor rather than direct experience, yet repeated often enough. They began to feel convincing. Human beings naturally trust familiar stories, especially when they are shared by neighbors, respected leaders, or members of the community. Little by little, imagination and reality became more difficult to separate. Looking back today, it is easy to ask why so many people believed such claims. But it is important to remember that they lived in a world without modern science, modern medicine, or reliable ways to investigate unusual events. Their understanding of the world was built from the knowledge available to them. They were not trying to ignore reason. They were trying to make sense of a world that often seemed unpredictable and frightening. By the late Middle Ages, these beliefs had become more organized than ever before. Scholars began writing books about the nature of evil. Religious authorities discussed how temptation might appear in everyday life. Judges and officials slowly became familiar with these ideas, carrying them beyond churches and monasteries into courts and towns across Europe. What had once been scattered beliefs was beginning to form a single, powerful narrative. And once ideas enter the courtroom, they often begin to shape lives. Before long, suspicion would no longer remain a matter of private belief. It would become a matter of law, and the consequences would reach thousands of ordinary people who never imagined they would one day stand accused. For many centuries, stories about magic and harmful spells had existed throughout Europe. They appeared in local legends, old traditions, and occasional court records, but they were usually treated as isolated events rather than part of a larger threat. Most villagers were far more concerned with surviving the next winter than searching for witches. Life remained focused on farming, family, and faith. Yet during the late 15th century, something began to change. A new way of thinking slowly spread across Europe. Instead of seeing strange events as separate misfortunes, some scholars and religious authorities began connecting them into a single explanation. They argued that witchcraft was not simply the practice of harmful magic. They believed it was part of a deliberate alliance with the devil himself. This idea gave old fears a new and far more dangerous meaning. In 1486, two German clergymen, Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, became associated with a book that would later become one of the most influential and controversial works of its time. Its Latin title was Malleus Maleficarum, often translated as the Hammer of Witches. The book claimed to explain who witches were, how they supposedly acted, and how they could be identified and prosecuted. Today, historians recognize that many of its arguments were based on fear, assumption, and unsupported claims rather than reliable evidence. Even in its own time, not everyone accepted its ideas. Some church officials questioned its conclusions, and many educated people remained skeptical. Nevertheless, the book spread quickly after the invention of the printing press. For the first time in history, the same ideas could be copied and distributed across large parts of Europe with remarkable speed. Judges, priests, and local authorities now had access to a text that appeared to offer clear answers to questions that had troubled communities for generations. The book encouraged readers to believe that witches could hide among ordinary people. They might appear kind, helpful, and respectable while secretly serving evil. This was a powerful idea because it suggested that danger could exist anywhere. Suspicion no longer focused on mysterious places alone. It began to focus on neighbors, someone who lived alone, someone who behaved differently, someone who possessed unusual knowledge of herbs or healing. None of these things proved wrongdoing, yet they could easily become reasons for doubt in an anxious community. It is important to remember that the book did not suddenly cause witch hunts across Europe. History is rarely changed by a single event or a single publication. Instead, it added fuel to fears that already existed. It offered a framework that seemed logical to many people living at that time, even though its conclusions were deeply flawed. Gradually, its influence reached courtrooms as well as churches. Local officials who had never investigated accusations of witchcraft before now believed they possessed guidance for doing exactly that. What had once been little more than rumor was beginning to enter the legal system, and once suspicion became part of the law, the lives of ordinary people would never be quite the same again. As the years passed, accusations of witchcraft slowly became more common in parts of Europe. they did not begin in large cities or royal courts. More often, they started in small villages where everyone knew one another and where daily life depended on trust. In communities like these, even a simple disagreement could leave lasting resentment. A dispute over a piece of land, an unpaid debt, or a quarrel between neighbors might be remembered for years. Most of the time, these conflicts ended peacefully. But when misfortune followed soon afterward, old arguments could suddenly take on a new meaning. Imagine a farmer whose cow dies only days after arguing with a neighbor, or a family whose child falls seriously ill after refusing help from the village healer. Today, we would see these events as unfortunate coincidences, but for many people living at that time, coincidence was a far less satisfying explanation than cause and effect. They believed that every terrible event must have a reason. If no natural explanation could be found, suspicion often filled the empty space. Those who stood apart from the rest of the community were especially vulnerable. An elderly widow living alone, a stranger who had recently arrived in the village, or someone known for preparing herbal remedies could all become the subject of quiet whispers. It is important to understand that using herbs or traditional medicine did not make someone a witch. In fact, many healers provided valuable care when no trained physicians were available. Yet knowledge that seemed unusual could easily be misunderstood by those who did not share it. Reputation became incredibly important. Once doubts began to spread, they were difficult to erase. A single accusation rarely remained private. Neighbors talked to one another. Stories were repeated, sometimes changing a little each time they were told. Details that could never be confirmed gradually began to sound like established facts. Human memory is not perfect, especially during times of fear. People often remember events in ways that support what they already believe. Historians today recognize this as a common feature of human psychology, but the people living through these events had no reason to question their own memories. They sincerely believed they were protecting their communities from danger. Local officials faced an equally difficult situation. They were expected to keep order and respond to serious accusations. Ignoring complaints could be seen as negligence, while investigating them risked giving greater importance to rumors. Different regions handled these cases in different ways. Some judges demanded strong evidence before taking action. Others accepted far weaker claims, especially if fear within the community continued to grow. As more cases entered local courts, the legal process itself began to change. Questions that had once seemed impossible to answer were now being asked before judges. How could someone prove they were not secretly serving evil? What evidence was enough when the crime itself was believed to be hidden from ordinary sight? These were questions with no simple answers. Yet the pressure to find them would soon lead investigators toward methods that produced not certainty, but something that appeared to resemble it. Before long, the search for truth would become overshadowed by the desperate search for confession. Once accusations reached the courtroom, everything became far more serious. A rumor shared between neighbors can now become an official investigation. Local judges were expected to determine whether the accused person was innocent or guilty, but this was far more difficult than it might seem. Witchcraft was believed to be a hidden crime. Unlike theft or murder, there was rarely any physical evidence that could be examined. There were no witnesses who claimed to have seen magic itself. Instead, many cases depended on suspicion, personal testimony, and the beliefs of the community. Judges faced a difficult challenge. They believed they had a duty to protect both the law and the people under their care. If they ignored a genuine threat, they feared that more innocent lives could be lost. But if they accepted false accusations, they risked punishing someone who'd done nothing wrong. From today's perspective, we know that many of these trials failed to meet even the most basic standards of justice. Yet many officials believed they were acting responsibly according to the knowledge and legal customs of their own time. One idea became especially important during these investigations. A confession was often considered the strongest possible evidence. If a person admitted to the crime, many believed the case had been settled. The problem, of course, was that obtaining a confession was not always simple. Those who insisted they were innocent could remain under suspicion for weeks or even months. In some regions of Europe, the law eventually allowed investigators to use methods intended to pressure suspects into confessing. These practices varied from place to place, and they were not used everywhere. Even at the time, some judges and religious leaders questioned whether such methods could ever produce reliable answers. They argued that a frightened or exhausted person might admit to almost anything simply to end their suffering. History has shown that these concerns were well-founded. Modern research into criminal justice has repeatedly demonstrated that false confessions can occur when people experience extreme physical or psychological pressure. Although medieval investigators believed confession revealed the truth, it often revealed only the unbearable weight of fear. Many accused individuals continued to deny every accusation until they could no longer endure the endless questioning. Others eventually confessed to impossible acts they could never have committed. Some described meetings that had never taken place or repeated stories suggested to them by their interrogators. Looking back today, these confessions tell us far more about the methods of the investigations than about the people who signed them. The tragedy is that once a confession had been recorded, it was often accepted as proof that the original accusation had been correct. Instead of ending the fear, each confession seemed to strengthen it. Communities that already believed witches existed now felt they had received confirmation. And with every new confession came another dangerous question. If one person had admitted to serving evil, surely they could not have acted alone. Very soon, investigators would begin asking accused men and women to name others, and that simple question would allow fear to spread from one household to the next with astonishing speed. Once a confession had been accepted, the investigation rarely ended there. Judges often believed that witchcraft was not the work of a single individual, but part of a much larger network. If one person admitted to serving evil, then surely others must also be involved. Investigators began asking a new question that would have enormous consequences. Who else was with you? It was a simple question, but it changed everything. Many of those being questioned found themselves in an impossible situation. They had already confessed, whether truthfully or under overwhelming pressure. Now, they were expected to provide more names. Some refused. Others mentioned people they barely knew. Some repeated rumors they had heard years before. Others simply named individuals they believed were already viewed with suspicion. Each new accusation created another investigation, and each investigation had the potential to produce even more accusations. Fear began to spread through entire communities. People who had lived peacefully beside one another for decades suddenly found themselves wondering whom they could trust. Ordinary disagreements now seemed more important than they once had. An argument over property, a family dispute, or a harsh word spoken during a difficult season could later be remembered in a very different light. Memories changed as fear grew stronger. Small incidents that had once seemed unimportant were now interpreted as possible signs of hidden wrongdoing. Historians often describe this process as a chain reaction. Every accusation increased the likelihood of another. Every confession appeared to confirm beliefs that already existed. Instead of reducing uncertainty, the legal process often strengthened it. Communities became convinced they were uncovering a hidden danger, when in reality, they were creating one through suspicion itself. It is also important to remember that not every town experienced these events in the same way. Some communities rejected accusations quickly and refused to pursue weak evidence. Others remained cautious throughout the period. But in places where fear combined with determined investigators and anxious populations, the number of trials could rise with surprising speed. Once fear became part of everyday life, it influenced even ordinary decisions. People became more careful about what they said in public. Some avoided disputes with their neighbors altogether. Others worried that offering unusual advice, practicing traditional healing, or simply living alone might attract unwanted attention. Reputation, which had always mattered in small villages, now became even more valuable. Losing the trust of the community could have serious consequences. Looking back today, it is clear that these trials reveal as much about human psychology as they do about history. When fear spreads through a society, people often begin searching for certainty wherever they can find it. Rumors start to sound like evidence. Assumptions begin to replace careful judgment. The desire to protect the community can unintentionally place innocent people in danger. These are lessons that continue to resonate centuries later. By the middle of the 16th century, the conditions for widespread witch hunts had largely fallen into place across parts of Europe. The beliefs had spread, the legal systems had adapted, the fears had taken root. What remained was the arrival of periods of crisis that would turn suspicion into one of the largest waves of persecution in European history. In the years ahead, entire regions would experience trials on a scale few could have imagined, and thousands of ordinary men and women would find themselves caught in a tragedy that continued to grow with each passing decade. By the late 16th century, the conditions that had been building for generations finally came together. Fear, religious belief, legal procedures, and uncertainty all combined at the same moment. Across parts of Europe, accusations of witchcraft became more frequent than ever before. Yet the trials did not spread evenly. Some regions experienced only a handful of cases, while others witnessed hundreds within a relatively short period of time. One of the hardest hit areas was the Holy Roman Empire, a vast collection of territories that covered much of present-day Germany and parts of Central Europe. Political authority was divided among many local rulers, each with its own courts and legal traditions. This meant that neighboring towns could respond very differently to similar accusations. In some places, judges remained cautious. In others, investigations expanded rapidly. These years were also marked by enormous hardship. Europe faced repeated crop failures, outbreaks of disease, periods of economic difficulty, and violent conflicts that disrupted everyday life. Historians also point to the effects of the Little Ice Age, a period of cooler temperatures that shortened growing seasons and made harvest less predictable. For farming communities already living close to survival, even a single failed harvest could have devastating consequences. When food became scarce, anxiety spread quickly. Families worried about feeding their children through the winter. Local leaders searched for ways to explain why familiar patterns of nature seemed to be changing. Looking back today, we understand that these hardships had natural causes, but the people living through them did not have the scientific knowledge available to us. They experienced repeated disasters without clear explanations, and many believed that powerful forces must be responsible. As fear increased, accusations became easier to believe. A poor harvest was no longer seen only as bad luck. A sudden illness no longer appeared to be merely a tragedy. Increasingly, communities began asking whether someone within the village had brought misfortune upon them. The search for answers often became a search for someone to blame. Once several trials had taken place in one area, nearby towns sometimes followed the same path. News traveled slowly, but stories traveled well. Reports of confessions and convictions reached neighboring communities, encouraging officials to begin investigations of their own. Each new trial appeared to confirm that the danger was real. Few people realized that fear itself had become the strongest force driving the process. By the beginning of the 17th century, large-scale witch hunts had become a reality in several parts of Europe. What had once been isolated accusations were now developing into waves of prosecutions involving entire communities. Thousands of ordinary people would soon find themselves standing before judges, accused of crimes that could never truly be proven. The darkest period of the witch hunts was only just beginning. As the 17th century unfolded, the witch hunts reached their most intense period. In several parts of Europe, accusations that had once been rare became frighteningly common. Entire communities found themselves living under a cloud of suspicion, never knowing who might be questioned next. Although the pattern varied from one region to another, some areas experienced waves of trials unlike anything seen before. Parts of the Holy Roman Empire witnessed some of the largest witch persecutions in European history. In certain towns, dozens of people were investigated within a single year. In a few tragic cases, the number grew into the hundreds over time. Similar fears appeared in parts of Scotland, Switzerland, France, and other regions, though each followed its own legal traditions and local circumstances. It is important to remember that these events were never happening everywhere at once. Many communities experienced very few trials, while others experienced none at all. History is often more complex than it first appears. The people who stood before the courts were rarely strangers or outsiders. More often, they were familiar faces. They were neighbors who had lived in the same village for decades. They were farmers, craftsmen, widows, midwives, and ordinary men and women whose daily lives had once seemed no different from anyone else's. Many had families who struggled to understand how everything had changed so quickly. A person respected one year could become the subject of suspicion the next. Once accusations began, rebuilding trust was almost impossible. Even when evidence was weak, the fear surrounding the trials often made doubt difficult to overcome. Looking back today, historians estimate that tens of thousands of people were executed for witchcraft in Europe over several centuries, while many more were investigated, imprisoned, or publicly accused. Most of those executed were women, although men were also accused and sentenced in significant numbers depending on the region. These figures remind us that the witch hunts were not the result of a single event or a single decision. They developed gradually through a combination of religious beliefs, legal systems, social tensions, and repeated periods of hardship. The tragedy was made even greater because many participants sincerely believed they were protecting their communities. Judges believed they were enforcing justice. Neighbors believed they were reporting genuine dangers. Religious leaders believed they were defending their faith. Few realized that fear itself had become the greatest threat. As the decades passed, some voices began questioning what was happening. A small number of scholars, judges, and clergy argued that many accusations lacked reliable evidence. They warned that confessions obtained under pressure could not always be trusted, and that innocent people might be suffering as a result. These doubts would slowly grow stronger in the years ahead. But before they could change the course of history, one more famous chapter still remained. Across the Atlantic Ocean, in a small English colony in North America, a new series of accusations was about to capture the attention of the world. The events that unfolded in the village of Salem would become the most well-known witch trials in history, leaving a legacy that continues to shape popular culture more than 3 centuries later. By the end of the 17th century, the great witch hunts of Europe were beginning to lose momentum in many regions. Yet the fears and beliefs that had shaped those centuries had not disappeared. They had crossed the Atlantic Ocean with the English settlers who established new communities in North America. Among those settlements was a small Puritan village known as Salem in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. At first glance, Salem seemed like many other colonial communities. Most families lived by farming, faith, and hard work. Life followed a strict religious routine, and the local church stood at the center of the village. The people believed that every part of life was guided by God's will, and that evil remained a constant danger. They hoped to build a faithful society, but daily life was far from peaceful. The village faced political uncertainty, conflicts with nearby communities, and the lingering fear of attacks along the colonial frontier. Disease, harsh winters, and economic difficulties added further strain. Like many communities before them, the people of Salem lived with a deep sense of uncertainty about the future. In this atmosphere of anxiety, unusual events attracted immediate attention. During the winter of 1692, several young girls began behaving in ways that frightened their families. They cried out unexpectedly, twisted their bodies into painful positions, and claimed to suffer from invisible forces that no one else could see. Local doctors examined them but could find no physical illness that explained their condition. With no clear medical answer available, attention quickly turned toward a possibility that many already feared. Some believed the girls had been affected by witchcraft. Once that idea entered the conversation, events moved with surprising speed. Religious leaders, village officials, and worried families all searched for an explanation. Questions soon became accusations. the first people suspected were not wealthy or powerful members of the community. Instead, suspicion fell upon individuals who already lived on the edges of village society. Among the earliest accused were Tituba, an enslaved woman living in the household of a local minister, Sarah Good, a homeless beggar, and Sarah Osborne, an older woman who had long been involved in disputes within the community. Although their lives were very different, they shared one important characteristic. Each of them already stood apart from the social expectations of the village. Looking back today, historians recognize that the accusations reflected far more than the strange behavior of a few children. Long-standing tensions, fear, religious belief, and uncertainty all combined to shape the events that followed. Salem did not create the fear of witchcraft. It inherited ideas that had been developing for centuries across Europe. Yet once those ideas took hold in the small colonial village, they produced one of the most famous trials in history. As the first arrests were made and formal questioning began, few people could have imagined how quickly suspicion would spread through nearly every corner of the community. As the first arrests were made, many people believed the crisis would soon come to an end. They expected that a few investigations would reveal the truth and restore peace to the village. Instead, the opposite happened. Each new hearing seemed to produce more accusations, and the circle of suspicion grew wider with every passing week. Those brought before the court were questioned for hours. Some firmly denied every accusation, insisting they had done nothing wrong. Others, frightened by the seriousness of the charges and the pressure surrounding the investigations, confessed to acts they had never committed. Just as had happened in parts of Europe decades earlier, some confessions included the names of other supposed witches. With every new name, another arrest followed. Before long, fear was no longer limited to those who already lived on the edges of society. Respected church members, successful farmers, and even individuals known for their strong religious faith found themselves under suspicion. No family's reputation could guarantee safety. To better understand how these accusations unfolded, it is worth stepping inside a typical courtroom in Salem. Although every trial was different, many followed a remarkably similar pattern. Imagine sitting quietly among the villagers as one of these hearings begins. The courtroom is crowded, yet remarkably silent. Wooden benches are filled with anxious faces. Some people have come to testify. Others have gathered simply to witness what may become one of the most important events in their community. At the front of the room, several magistrates sit behind a heavy wooden table covered with handwritten documents, ink bottles, and official records. Every conversation is spoken in a low voice, as though the weight of the moment can already be felt. The accused is led into the room under guard. There are no traumatic outbursts and no desperate cries. Instead, there is an uneasy silence. Family members lower their eyes. Neighbors who once shared ordinary conversations now watch from a distance, uncertain of what to believe. The chief magistrate finally speaks. "Do you confess that you have practiced witchcraft?" The accused answers calmly, "No, sir, I have never practiced witchcraft." Another question follows almost immediately. "If you are innocent, how do you explain the suffering of these children?" Before the accused can answer, several young girls seated nearby suddenly begin crying out. One clutches her throat and claims invisible hands are choking her. Another points toward the accused. and insist that the person's spirit is standing beside her, threatening her even at that very moment. The room grows restless. Whispered conversations spread across the benches. To a modern observer, these reactions would not be accepted as evidence. But in Salem, many people believed they were witnessing proof of an unseen attack. The magistrates carefully observe every movement. Some quietly write notes, while others question the witnesses one by one. A farmer steps forward and recalls that his healthiest cow died only days after a disagreement with the accused. Another villager remembers that the previous year's harvest had failed without explanation. A third witness claims to have heard strange sounds outside the accused person's house late one evening. None of these events proves that a crime has been committed. Yet together, they begin forming a story that feels convincing to people already expecting to discover hidden evil. The magistrate turns once more toward the accused. This is your final opportunity. Will you confess? Once again, the answer is quiet but unwavering. I am innocent. The questioning continues for hours. The same accusations are repeated again and again. The same answers are given. Some people watching begin to believe that refusing to confess is itself evidence of guilt. Others bow their heads and pray in silence. Eventually, the magistrates leave the courtroom to consider their decision. No one speaks while they are gone. Every person waits in complete silence. After several long minutes, the judges return. The chief magistrate slowly rises to his feet. Having considered the testimony presented before this court, the statements of the witnesses, and the evidence placed before us, this court finds the accused guilty of the crime of witchcraft. Another pause follows before the sentence is read. The prisoner shall remain in custody until the appointed day, upon which the sentence of death shall be carried out according to the laws of this colony. No one applauds. No voices celebrate the decision. Some quietly whisper prayers. Others leave the courtroom without saying a single word. Many believe justice has been done. Yet among a few who witnessed the trial, a quiet doubt has already begun to take root. Scenes like this were repeated again and again throughout the Salem trials. While each case had its own details, the growing reliance on fear, rumor, and unverified testimony gradually led more people to question whether justice was truly being served. One of the most unusual features of the Salem trials was the acceptance of what became known as spectral evidence. Several of the young accusers claimed that the invisible spirit or spectre of an accused person had appeared before them, causing pain or terror even while that person was somewhere else. Today, such claims would not be accepted as evidence in any court of law. But in 1692, many judges believed that these testimonies deserved serious consideration. The court struggled with a difficult question. Could an invisible attack be treated as proof of a real crime? Some officials answered yes. Others were far less certain. As the trials continued, doubts slowly began to emerge. A growing number of ministers, scholars, and community leaders worried that innocent people might be suffering. Because the court was relying too heavily on accusations that could not be verified, they feared that once invisible evidence was accepted, almost anyone could become a suspect. The concern spread beyond Salem itself. News of the trials reached other towns throughout the Massachusetts Bay Colony. People who had once supported the investigations began asking whether justice was truly being served. Even some families who had believed the accusations at first started questioning the process after seeing respected neighbors brought before the court. The turning point came gradually rather than all at once. Colonial leaders became increasingly uncomfortable with the growing number of arrests and the lack of reliable evidence. Eventually, the use of spectral evidence was rejected, and the special court responsible for many of the trials was dissolved. Without its most controversial form of evidence, the accusations quickly began to lose momentum. By the following year, the crisis had largely come to an end. In total, more than 200 people had been accused during the Salem witch trials, and 19 were executed after being convicted. Several others died while imprisoned before their cases could be resolved. For the people who survived, the events left lasting emotional wounds that would remain for the rest of their lives. Salem became one of history's clearest reminders that fear, once accepted as evidence, can grow far beyond anyone's original expectations. In the years that followed, many people began reflecting on what had happened, asking how an entire community could have allowed suspicion to replace justice. Those difficult questions would eventually help change the way future generations thought about evidence, law, and the responsibility of the courts. The events at Salem did not bring an immediate end to the fear of witchcraft. Even after the trials had ended, many people continued to believe that witches existed. What began to change was not necessarily belief itself, but the way accusations were judged. More and more people started asking whether fear alone should ever be enough to condemn another human being. These questions were not limited to the American colonies. Across Europe, similar discussions had already begun to emerge. Judges, scholars, and religious leaders increasingly questioned the methods that had been used during the great witch hunts. They asked whether confessions obtained under pressure could truly be trusted. They wondered whether rumors should ever be treated as reliable evidence. Some also recognized that many accusations had grown from personal conflicts rather than genuine crimes. At the same time, Europe was entering a period that historians now call the Age of Enlightenment. Curiosity about the natural world expanded rapidly. Scientists began studying weather, disease, astronomy, and physics in new ways. Instead of accepting every unexplained event as supernatural, more people searched for natural explanations. This did not happen overnight. Old beliefs remained deeply rooted, especially in rural communities. But little by little, knowledge began replacing uncertainty. Illness was increasingly viewed as a medical problem rather than evidence of hidden magic. Crop failures were understood through changing weather and farming conditions instead of secret curses. As understanding grew, fear slowly lost some of its power. Legal systems also became more cautious. Courts in many regions introduced stricter standards for evidence. Judges became less willing to accept testimony based only on dreams, rumors, or invisible spirits. Written records, reliable witnesses, and observable facts gradually became more important than suspicion alone. These changes represented a significant turning point in the history of justice. They reflected a growing belief that every accused person deserved a fair hearing supported by credible evidence. Even so, the transition was gradual. Some communities continued holding witch trials well into the 18th century. Old fears do not disappear simply because new ideas emerge. They often remain for years, sometimes for generations. But the great waves of persecution that had once swept across Europe were becoming less common. The public mood was changing. More people began to see witch trials not as acts of protection, but as tragic mistakes that had cost countless innocent lives. Looking back, historians often describe this period as the beginning of a profound shift in human thinking. Society was slowly learning that justice is strongest when it is guided by evidence rather than fear, and by careful investigation rather than assumption. Although this lesson came far too late for many of those who had already suffered, it would help shape the legal principles that continue to influence courts around the world today. Yet before the story of the witch hunts could truly come to an end, a few final trials would remind Europe how difficult it can be to leave old fears behind. Although the great waves of witch hunts were fading, they did not disappear all at once. In some isolated communities, old fears continued to shape people's lives well into the 18th century. From time to time, new accusations still appeared, and a handful of trials were held long after many parts of Europe had already begun moving away from such beliefs. These final cases served as reminders that changing laws is often easier than changing minds. Gradually, governments and courts became more willing to examine the mistakes of the past. Legal reforms introduced higher standards of evidence, making it increasingly difficult to convict someone based on rumor, superstition, or unsupported testimony alone. Judges became more cautious, and investigators were expected to rely on facts that could be examined rather than fears that could only be imagined. Religious leaders also began expressing greater concern about false accusations. While belief in good and evil remained central to many people's faith, growing numbers argued that justice required wisdom, patience, and reliable evidence. Protecting innocent lives became just as important as punishing genuine wrongdoing. Over time, the number of witch trials continued to decline. By the middle of the 18th century, prosecutions had become increasingly rare across most of Europe. Laws that had once allowed the execution of people accused of witchcraft were gradually repealed or simply fell out of use. Communities that had once lived in constant fear slowly returned to ordinary concerns, raising families, working the land, and rebuilding trusts that had been damaged by generations of suspicion. History cannot tell us exactly how many innocent people were accused over the centuries. Records differ from one region to another, and many documents have been lost. Historians generally estimate that tens of thousands of people were executed for witchcraft across Europe, while many more experienced imprisonment, interrogation, or public accusation. Behind every number was a human life, a family, and a community forever changed by fear. In the centuries that followed, governments in several countries formally acknowledged that many of the trials had been unjust. Some convictions were symbolically overturned long after the victims had died. Memorials were built in places where executions had taken place, reminding future generations of the consequences of fear and injustice. Although these acts could never undo the suffering, they represented an important effort to remember the past honestly. Today, the phrase witch hunt has taken on a broader meaning. It is often used to describe situations in which people are unfairly accused without convincing evidence, especially when fear, public pressure, or rumor outweigh careful investigation. The expression survives because the history behind it remains deeply meaningful. It reminds us how easily suspicion can spread when emotions become stronger than facts. Looking back across these centuries, it becomes clear that the story of the witch hunts is not simply about witches. It is a story about human nature. It is about the search for certainty during uncertain times, the desire to protect loved ones, and the danger of allowing fear to replace evidence. The people who lived through these events believed they were making difficult decisions in an uncertain world. Many acted with sincere intentions, yet those good intentions did not always lead to just outcomes. The history of the witch hunts still speaks to us today because it asks timeless questions. How should a society respond when fear begins to spread? How can justice remain fair when emotions run high? And how can ordinary people protect one another without allowing suspicion to become stronger than compassion? Those questions have no simple answers, but perhaps remembering this history is one way of ensuring that its darkest chapters are never repeated. As the echoes of those distant courtrooms slowly fade into silence, they leave behind a quiet reminder that truth is strongest when it is sought with patience, humility, and reason. And so, our journey through the history of the witch hunts comes to a quiet end. What began as fear of the unknown slowly grew into one of history's most tragic chapters, reminding us how easily uncertainty can become suspicion, and how suspicion can sometimes overcome justice. Across centuries, thousands of ordinary people found themselves caught in events they could never have imagined. Farmers, healers, neighbors, mothers, fathers, and friends all became part of a story that continues to teach us important lessons even today. Perhaps the greatest lesson is not about witches at all. It is about the importance of patience, compassion, and the courage to seek truth before passing judgment. History cannot change what happened, but by remembering it, we can better understand ourselves and the world we live in today. Thank you for joining me on tonight's journey through history. If you enjoyed this peaceful exploration, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps this channel continue creating long, relaxing history documentaries designed to help you unwind, learn something new, and gently drift off to sleep. If there is another historical mystery or forgotten civilization you would like to explore in a future episode, feel free to share your suggestion in the comments below. I always enjoy reading your ideas. And now, wherever you are in the world, I hope you can leave behind the noise of the day, slow your thoughts, and enjoy a peaceful night's rest. Thank you for spending this time with me. Sleep well, and I'll see you in the next journey through history. Good night.